So now we will be shifting the conversation a little bit into mental health. We're really excited to bring out our next panel. I'm going to be handing things over to our moderator for this next conversation, Colleen Russo Johnson. Colleen is a VP of Digital and Cultural Consumer Insights at Nickelodeon Paramount, and she'll be leading our discussion, joined on stage by Daryl McDaniels, aka DMC, who I think we all know. Hopefully you've seen him around the summit. He's been incredible performing, doing talks. He has his books. It's really incredible. We're so lucky to have him here. Hip-hop legend, obviously, of Run DMC. He's a philanthropist and an author as well. We're so thrilled to have him here. And as well as DMC, we will have Aaliyah Samuel, who is the president and CEO of the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning. So we will have them here, as well as Erin Andrews, Director of Clinical Affairs at Uwill, and Sol Cole, who is a flow facilitator at Sol Cole, the brand. Yep. He's also a former NFL player for the New Orleans Saints, and hopefully you've had a chance to spend some time with him because he's been leading moments of mindfulness here at the summit every day. So hopefully you've gotten a chance to participate in those. But if not, we're so lucky to have all of them here for this conversation. So here to discuss the student mental health crisis, we're really thrilled to welcome our panel.
Thank you so much for being here for this critical discussion on the youth mental health crisis, but very importantly, what we can do about it. But before we dive in, I have to acknowledge this is the last session of an incredible conference, but that means we're all exhausted. I know I'm extra exhausted, so I thought a great way to kick this off would be to have the incredible Sol Cole lead us in a grounding, breathing exercise.
Let's settle in. Find some length in your spine. You sit up nice and tall. If you feel safe, I invite you to close your eyes. And if not, focus your gaze softly in front of you. Just bring your awareness to your breath. Notice the inhale through your nose, gently as it exhales out through your nose as your lips are slightly closed. Let's take this time to set our intention for this session. You can place one or both of your hands over your heart and breathe that intention into your heart space. Feeling the beat, feeling the rhythm. And on your next inhale, in through your nose, an open mouth exhale, releasing that intention into this space. And dropping your hands down by your side. And for this next session, I need some participation for this grounding experience. So I will ground you in your bag with 2 G's. Say the word like, please do the right thing, Spike Lee. The first letter is B. We breathe in through our nose. We breathe out through our mouth. Make that sound audible on the way out. 2 more times. In through your nose and out through your mouth. Good. 1 more time. Last one, in and all the way out. Affirm. Repeat after me. I am worthy.
I am worthy.
I am blessed. I am divine. Now 1 more time like you mean it. I am worthy.
I am worthy.
I am blessed.
I am blessed.
I am divine.
I am divine.
Good, good. 2 G's. Give gratitude. Give from your heart. Give from the start. Give openly. Give freely. Give generously. Gratitude. Have a practice of gratitude daily. I am grateful for this moment. I am grateful for every beautiful face in this place. You have now been grounded in your bag with 2 G's. Colleen.
Wow, that was amazing. Thank you. Yes, give it up. All of us in this room have a unique why of how we got into the space that we're in. So I'm really curious to hear from these 4 incredible panelists, their unique whys of how they got into the mental health space. They all have very different journeys, and I'm going to pick on Daryl first because Daryl, I have to say, in addition to being the king of hip hop, I would also declare you the king of vulnerability when it comes to discussing mental health. So I'd love for you to walk us through your journey of how the iconic DMC discovered the importance of asking for help and the power of therapy.
In 1993, when Run DMC's album Down with the King was released, it was kind of like our comeback. Pete Rock, one of the greatest producers ever in hip-hop, did for Run DMC what people say Run DMC did for Aerosmith. We walked this way. Down with the King brought us back, put us back on the road, back on the charts, back on the radio, back on MTV. The day after we shot the Down with the King video, I woke up the next day and wanted to kill myself. And I didn't know why. And I tried to put my fingers on it. You know, I went through my life, Daryl, McDaniels, Run, Jay, my mother, my father. And there was this empty void in me. And I said, all right, people know the DMC story. If I do kill myself, there's videos and records and, you know, people winning the tours, but they don't know Darryl, who was the little boy Darryl. So I wanted to write a book just in case I was going to leave this existence. So I called my mother up, and at the time, I'm an alcoholic, suicidal, metaphysical, spiritual wreck. So I called my mother up, and I should have told my mother what I was going through, but I didn't. If I could do it all over with what I know now, I would have. But I called my mother up, and I said, Mom, I'm writing this book. I want to know 3 things about the day I was born. How much did I weigh? What time I was born? What hospital? She told me. Hung up the phone, an hour goes by, she calls back with my father. I'm an alcoholic, suicidal, metaphysical, spiritual wreck who's thinking of killing himself. She calls back and says, we have something else to tell you. And I go, what? She says, well, you was a month old when we brought you home and you're adopted, but we love you, bye. So imagine where I was at mentally then. And long story short, after that, I was 35 years old when I found out that I was adopted. Then I found out that I was a foster kid. Then Jam Master Jay got shot and killed. And then my father, Bifer, died. So what had happened was when I found out that I was adopted, somebody told me, don't you want to know who your birth mother is? And I was like, nope. You know the record, son of Byford, brother of Al Banners, my mother runs my pal. It's McDaniels, not McDonald's. These rhymes are Darryls, those burgers are Ronald's. I ran down my family tree, my mother, my father, my brother, and me. Christmas time in Hollis, Queens. But then this person just said, D, that's all good. That's your mother and father, but that's chapter 2 of your story. So when I figured out there was this chapter 1 of my life, I said, in order for me to go down that road of searching for my birth mother and being able to cope with whatever I find, I said I had to be of sound mind and body. So I went to rehab. And in rehab, I discovered the most gangster, powerful thing you could ever do for any man, woman, boy, child, Jewish person, Muslim, or Rastafarian. I found this thing called therapy. So I get out of therapy and I'm walking around the world and people haven't seen me. They've seen my friend Run on TV with 10 seasons of Run's House. And people would come up to me and say, D, where you been at? And I would go, well, I was an alcoholic, suicidal, metaphysical, spiritual wreck who found out he was adopted. And I would tell them my story. And people just started saying, D, you talk so openly about your story. So then I realized, because of all of that, the King of Rock, my Adidas Walk This Way thing, telling people that life can be tricky, was the setup for what I was really put here to do. So here I am. No shame about any of it. Remove guilt and shame, you remove the pain. And if you talk about it, if you talk about how you feel, whether good or bad, you will heal. So here I am.
Wow. Yes. Inspiring every time. Wow. So, Sol, you also have a very unique path to how you got to where you are, from NFL legend to leading mindfulness expert. And I know that, like Darryl, you also want to, make mindfulness cool for young people, and that a big driver for you has been being that role model that you wished you had as a child growing up. So, talk us through your journey and inspiration.
Appreciate you being vulnerable, Daryl. That means a lot. And talking about my story, I'll start with my why. And my why is to use my God-given abilities to be of service. And my story began in 2018. I like to say that I had just finished my last season in the NFL, which I didn't know it was my last season at the time. I go into the off season. I have surgery on my neck and on my hip back-to-back months. And I'm thinking I'm getting ready to prepare to come back for Comeback Player of the Year after having neck surgery and hip surgery. I'm on crutches for 6 weeks and I can't turn my neck. That was the most vulnerable I had ever been. And a lot of you have seen me walking around here. I'm 6'6", right? I could not defend myself for the first time ever. That was scary. I didn't even want to go outside, especially being a man of color. At that time, it was just like, bro, how you gonna defend yourself? You always gotta look over your shoulder. Every time you step out that door, you a target. So I didn't know how to process that. Emotional intelligence was not in my vocabulary at all. I shut down. Depression was knocking at my front door. Anxiety was standing right beside him. And it was an opportunity for me to make a decision of what I was going to do next. But I had to take some courage to look in the mirror and fight back and figure out that my life was worth fighting for. So I ended up getting some help, therapy, like you said, like that was something that was important along my journey. But along that way, I didn't see any representation or lack thereof, especially men of color in this space, sharing their story, being vulnerable, athletes as well. But I realized I had a platform, and I realized that I also have a voice. And maybe I need to be that change agent. Maybe I need to be that champion for change, especially in the mental health. We all deal with mental health. We all have physical health, emotional health, spiritual health. Nobody's above that. Doesn't matter what profession you're in. Kids, especially. Adults, sometimes we be in denial, but if we willing to look ourselves in the mirror and be honest with ourselves, we struggle every day. Stuff is keeping us up at night. So along this journey, the rebrand came, Soul Code was born. SOUL is an acronym. I don't think I've told you guys that. Seeking oneness using love. And so that's also a part of my why. Love. If we spent more time with genuine love to our neighbors, to ourselves, the world will be a better place. And so that's a part of, what I'm doing now and being my authentic self, expressing being vulnerable like you and telling my story to anybody who will listen, because we're all storytellers in our own way, right? Whether it's, any form of art is you telling your story, and how do you tell your story is impactful. And so I'm finding my voice on this journey and figuring out that this is my purpose and being in alignment with my true calling.
So beautiful. Wow. And thank you both for the vulnerability. Dr. Samuel, you are one of our nation's leading educational experts. What is it about this particular time that led you to focusing on social and emotional learning as the current president and CEO of the esteemed Castle organization?
Thanks for that question. And I actually want to use a term that Daryl said. I was really set up for this phase of my life and work. This is my 24th year in education. I started off as a special education teacher, assistant principal, then got into education policy. And as luck would have it, or the universe would have it, I ended up being a deputy assistant secretary at the U.S. Department of Education as a presidential appointee reopening the nation's schools during the pandemic. And so never I had my own kindergartner at home, I had a third grader at home, and I'm also trying to reopen, and trust me, I was ready for my kids to go back to school. And so reopening the nation's schools, I had an opportunity to travel all across the United States, and this is before the vaccinations rolled out, this is before the reopening measures. I mean, it was a critical time in our nation's history. But as I traveled across the US with the administration trying to figure out how do we reopen the nation's schools, it didn't matter rural, urban, rich, poor. The one thing I heard was not only the impact of academic and instructional loss, but relationship loss. And I realized at that time that for those of us who were around in the 80s and 90s, physical fitness was the big thing then. We had Richard Simmons, we had Jane Fonda, and it was all let's get physical. That we were living in a moment that this issue around social emotional learning and our students' and adults' well-being was going to be the thing for the future. And as events would happen, I was set up really for this next role. I had served in an advisory capacity to CASEL earlier on in my career when I was at the National Governors Association, and they were transitioning as well. And it was the perfect alignment of both professional passion as a pure educator, the policy realities that we saw as we were trying to reopen the nation's schools, but then also as a parent who had 2 kids at home, navigating the transition of remote learning and going back into the building. So it was really the convergence of those 3 things that it was, Aaliyah, this is something that you can commit yourself to for the next part of your life, because truly we're seeing it everywhere, and the data is, our students are telling us that, and the data is telling us.
Incredible. Erin, you are at the wonderful Uwill, which is our nation's leading resource for undergraduates when it comes to mental health and wellness. And I love the immediacy of Uwill, really giving students the support right when they need it. What was it about your journey and the experience you had that led you to the unique approach of Uwill?
Yeah, so like I'm sure everybody in this room, I came from a family that had a lot of complex dynamics, and those really impacted me in a way where I was interacting with myself and the people around me in a place that I really didn't like. So like a lot of therapists, I went to school to study psychology to learn a lot about myself and then also the people around me. What is it that started to make me operate this way and make others operate in this way, and how do I start to disrupt what those patterns look like for people? From there, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, I was like, I'm gonna get into public health because that seems like where they really need me. And there I quickly got very disillusioned because bureaucracy is something that very much can limit and at times restrict the ways that we are trying to show up and support people. And not only that, but there is a massive drain on resources, like everywhere in the country, that the wait list was 6 months to a year long, depending on the time of the year, where people were waiting and getting worse and sometimes being hospitalized, or much worse outcomes where there's also some people that are dying by suicide while they are waiting to get the care that they need. So I started looking elsewhere to see where is there disruption that's happening that's allowing us to show up for people immediately and in ways that really empower them and give them autonomy in the process, where a lot of times they don't have autonomy. And there's a lot of vulnerability that goes into even asking for help. So how can we have people feel more in control and more like they can get exactly what they need when they need it? And that's what brought me to Uwill, because all of those values that I'm mentioning are exactly what they're doing. So what they are doing is giving people immediacy. Somebody can get registered and get an appointment within 5 minutes, which is pretty revolutionary because anybody who has looked for a therapist, myself included, it takes a lot of work to get out there and get an appointment, and you are waiting around. So this is at the tip of people's fingertips. And then the other piece that's also really important is that students are given this opportunity to find somebody who looks like them. In therapy, we have a lot of white therapists, myself included. I'm going to call myself out there. But there are also a lot of diverse counselors and a lot of diverse voices, and they can be hard to find and also have wait lists. So it gives students that access to see somebody who they can identify with and really gives them that rapport and comfort so that they can start therapy on the right foot and have this space that they can just be vulnerable, like Sol and Daryl are doing up here with us today as well, sharing their stories. So a lot of that is what brought me to Uwill and what I'm proud to be a part of.
So important. I want to focus more on solutions because that's the theme of this conference, right? Here comes the sun. It has to get better, right? We have to have hope at least that it will. My hope is that everyone in this room walks away from today with the inspiration to do something in your organization or school district to improve the mental well-being of your population. Something I love that my very good friend and colleague, the brilliant Makita Mays-Green, often says is, progress does not require perfection. Some movement in the space is better than nothing at all. One thing that MTV and Active Minds have teamed up to do is the ASK campaign. At the show later, you'll have a chance to maybe get one of these bracelets, but it stands for Acknowledge, Support, and Keep in Touch. It's kind of the new stop, drop, and roll for mental health. That's one solution, but there's a lot of things that are happening that I want you to hear about. And Dr. Samuel, I want to start with you because, this mental health crisis is not just impacting students' ability to learn, it's impacting their very ability to show up for school. Chronic absenteeism rates are through the roof. We've never seen anything like this, and it's happening across all demographics. Can you talk to us more about this and why social emotional learning is such a critical solution for this?
Sure, I just want to share two statistics. So prior to the pandemic, the chronic absenteeism rate was hovering at about 18%. Post-pandemic, we're at 30%. And why that's so striking is that it is across, again, all demographics, urban, rural, rich, white, black, poor, doesn't matter. Our kids are not showing up to school. And if you're not in school, you can't learn. Another really interesting statistic, this is Castle's 30th year. When Castle was born 30 years ago, the mental health crisis was about 20% of our nation's youth. And at that time, that number was startling. Now we're at almost 50% of our young people reporting mental health issues, depression, anxiety. So our numbers are not trending in the right way. And as a peer educator, what does an educator do? Create a Venn diagram. So what I'd like to share is that, and it is Castle Blue, very on brand for us. What I'd like to share and just clarify is that social emotional learning is not mental health. It is not therapy. What social emotional learning is and does in the classroom is provide universal supports that we know all kids need to be able to thrive, not only academically, but within their relationships as well. And we know that a child having one adult in their life that they have strong relationships with can help reduce depression, it can help reduce anxiety, it can help reduce suicide ideation. Just one adult. And so many of our young people right now don't have that relationship. The second thing is we know that, and I am a peer educator, so I feel I can say this, is that every education setting is not a safe one. So how do we create safe and supportive environments, school environments, where every single child, regardless of who they are, where they come from, they have an opportunity to learn and be their best self? Because every single kid wants at least one thing when they go to school, which is what? To make friends. And we know these skills are critical. And then the skill development, actually being able to practice the skills of how do you manage yourself? How do you manage your emotions? How do you work cooperatively with others? And having the professional development, one, for our educators to be able to name those skills and encourage those skills in the classroom, which we know is the most organic place where kids learn and can practice these skills, are all the components that can help attribute stronger social emotional learning skills, which then serve as a buffer or proxy to less mental health issues. And so it's important that we really consider the two together. And I will just say one other thing. Coming out of the pandemic, we cannot academic our way out of this. We can't separate or bifurcate SEL or social emotional learning and academics. If we want our kids to truly recover from the pandemic, we need to continue the integration of them both, the academics and their social and emotional well-being.
And Erin, you are working with a population that is being trained to be the workforce, the future, a very important area. So what are the biggest issues that you're seeing, and what are some of the solutions?
The issues have stayed pretty consistent. where for students it's still a lot of stress, a lot of academic concerns, a lot going on with relationship dynamics, a lot of depression, a lot of anxiety. And that's standard across the board. It's not just for our college students. What's interesting is that it's 42% of Gen Z who has actually been given a psychiatric diagnosis, and then it's 78% of our college students are looking for support when it comes to feeling blue, feeling sad, feeling anxious, feeling nervous. So we've got a large percentage of that population who's really looking and seeking help, and then having a lot of barriers in place that are limiting their ability to seek help. So something that's really important for Uwill is making it as accessible and reducing as many boundaries as possible. So it's things like making it something that's free and available through school, making it something that's quick, where there's not this long, complicated intake that's preventing them from getting things that they need, but it's also switching the lens. So for us, we do a lot of strength-based, solution-focused work. So it's things like distilling hope and a lot of different things within our language. So instead of that presenting concern, it's becoming, what's your current challenge? What's the thing that's not going right now? And how do we make sure that you know that this is transient, that it's okay to be uncomfortable, that being uncomfortable is normal, and that that's also where growth happens. A lot of our college students are really struggling with, how do I tolerate distress? And something that for some of us we're thinking of as everyday occurrences, for them are panic attack inducing and feel like the end of the world. So in our sessions, we're really focusing on giving them those distress tolerance skills and making sure that they know how to show up in their own lives and take care of themselves, and what does that look like? And there are foundational things like exercise, and then there are things that are a lot more complex, like how do I start communicating assertively instead of just taking things passively? How do I put up boundaries in my relationships so that I'm getting what I need while other people are also getting what they need? And really just making sure that they have everything that they need so that they're entering that workforce prepared to be independent and fully functioning adults who feel confident in their ability to take on the world, which right now they are not necessarily feeling.
Absolutely. And, you know, Dr. Samuel, you have a quote that relates to that about the importance of supporting our teachers and in professional development. I'm going to call you out because Sol loves this.
I said this. There's a saying you hear often in education, and actually one of our presenters at our conference last November said it, that if you, her session was on this, that if you don't feed the teachers, they'll devour the children. And so just thinking about really how do we support, I mean, it's true, and I would even venture to say it's if you don't feed the adults, because it can be parent, caregiver, teacher. And so how are we really thinking about these supports, not only for the children who are so impacted and looking to us for support, but how do we support the very adults who are modeling the behaviors that we know our young people need?
Absolutely, it's so powerful. Wow. So Daryl, can you talk to us about your books? I have to say, Daryl's Dream is a big hit in my household. My kids love it. Tell us more about those, and also just what you're doing to help fill that void that I know you so desperately wish had been filled when you're younger, so you could have gotten to where you were sooner.
Well, I guess what we're saying here, a lot of the situations that happen to us with mental health are present when we're young, even when we're kids. Think about it like this. Our world is our families, our friends, our relationships, our jobs and our careers, and just interaction with, everyday people. It's the same thing for the kids, but their world is their households, their streets, their backyards, their classrooms, and their playgrounds. So a lot of things like confusion and self-esteem and being afraid happens in the classroom. It's the same way it happens to us in school, high school, and at work. So Cole would have been a savior for me because a lot of things that hit me later in life was always present in my life. My first day at St. John's University, I get up to the campus, and I wish Uwill was there too. I get there, me and my best friend Douglas Hayes, we went to school from kindergarten to 8th grade together, and then we went to school from 9th grade to 12th grade together. So he's the one that told me when we graduate, pick St. John's and pick business management. So one of the morals is, don't listen to your friends. Take their advice. So I did. So I get to St. John's the first day of school, and Butter, we call him Butter, he's not there. So I go to the payphone. There's no beepers and nothing. I go to the payphone and I call Butter's house, 718-776-3652. I still remember it. He goes, what do you want? I'm like, yo, Butter, it's the first day of school. He says, hold on. I guess he checked his schedule. I ain't got no classes with you, and he hung up on me. And when I turned around and I looked at, I was alone. In anxiety, confusion, and afraid. So you know what I did? I got back on the bus, went back to Hollis, I went to the pool hall, and I started drinking 40s of Old English. So if I would have had soul and if I had Uwill, I could have immediately went to Uwill. So fast forward, I hook up with your people at Nickelodeon, and I come up with a book that'll address some of the issues that the kids will experience when they get older. My book deals with believing in yourself, creativity, not following what your friend's doing. So everything that happens, it's a book about me in 3rd grade wanting to say my poem. So you can imagine what anxiety and stress and obstacles was against me. So I decided to do Daryl's Dream, to have a way to communicate and prepare the kids to let them know that some of those skills and abilities and capabilities are present in you now. And I always tell them, it's cool to be scared. I've been in the music business for 40 years. This is 3rd graders. And I still get scared before I go on stage. And they look at me, you do? And I'm like, yes. And to deal with my depression and alcoholism and OCD, and when I checked in the rehab, they put the 10 characteristics of a addictive personality on the blackboard. I was all of them. And the therapist and everybody started clapping. And I was like, what are you clapping for? You're on the way your recovery because you're being truthful and honest. So when I got out of rehab, I wrote a book called 10 Ways Not to Commit Suicide, because you don't have to do it. So I'm using art and creativity, and soul is also to communicate in a way that is comfortable, and whether you're a 3rd grader or 4th grader or even a kindergarten or a grown person, you will be able to understand. My greatest achievement isn't Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, isn't all the awards and first to go gold, first to go platinum. My greatest achievement is sitting here, living on this earth, as an example. You can beat and defeat whatever you are struggling against.
Incredible. So cool. I would love for you to talk to us about what you are doing, what you are calling solutions. And you have a new solution, Mighty Soul. So tell us about it.
So Mighty Soul is a reflection of my inner child, and this seed was actually planted almost 3 years ago, and I just been sitting on it because I didn't know what to do with it. I had so many other ideas that I was working on: the meditation mixtape, volume 1, affirmations and ad-libs. And now I'm sitting with this cartoon character who's, a representation of my inner child, but I was like, what do you want to actually do with this? So I sat with it, and I just put it in the chamber for, a year or two, and now here we are, and I feel like, anybody in here like the color? All right, cool. I just want to see if y'all was honest. All right. 'Cause I got adult coloring books myself. And so I spend a lot of time coloring, and it's therapeutic for me, right? I got the 250 color pencil pack, like the travel pack, like I'm serious with it. And so I would spend time just coloring, but then I realized like kids love coloring too. And during the pandemic, I actually had an opportunity so shout out to Discovery Lane, it's a charter school in Southern Maryland. They actually allowed me to come in and teach mindfulness to their 1st and 2nd graders, 30 minutes once a week. So appreciate that. And it was virtual and in person. So and I don't have I'm not a pure educator. Right? So I didn't go to school training for this. My training was training camp in the summer for football. So I told the teacher, I said, as long as you know that this is not my thing, but she allowed me to do that, and those kids would sit in silence for 60 seconds and allow me to, guide them to breathe. You know how hard that is? They were sitting still, they was breathing, and this was virtual. So that's when I knew I got a gift and I need to figure out a way to bring this to life. And so this is the first therapeutic tool, a solution that I'm offering to these kids that'll be on Amazon by the end of this month. So there we go.
Congratulations. Wow, thank you. Please give it up for these incredible panelists. Thank you so much.